Cool.
Hey everyone, and welcome to a new episode of 2.5 Salesmen. I'm your host, Mario, together with my good friend, Julio, where we talk all things sales, completely unfiltered and raw. Julio, how are you doing, man?
Very good, very good. New headset today, as you can see. I wanted to look more like a gamer, just to get more in the mood of let's having some fun with sales.
Yep. Cool, man. Cool headset. I do love it. And I love the color. White is so cool.
That's why I got it. That's why.
Yeah. It kind of has the thing where it changes color once in a while.
It does in this side, on the side, of course.
Oh,
it's a proper
so
gamer set.
A proper gamer set, right? Cool. So, ladies and gentlemen, in today's episode, we will talk about sales tech. Specifically, we will talk about what is the bare minimum you absolutely must have when it comes to sales technology, right? And we will split this podcast into two parts. Part one, we will talk about top of the funnel. So basically, if you're an SDR or BDR, what is it that can just bare necessities that you need to have in your sales tech stack? And then second part, we will talk a little bit about AE. I have AI on my mind. You see, it like
you love it. You love it. It's just ChatGPT has got into your brain, basically.
I am ChatGPT. If it ever fails, this episode will not age well.
True.
So in second part, we will talk about account executives and what account executives absolutely must have. And we will talk about bare minimums. We absolutely realize and recognize that there is a lot of it out there, right? But let's just talk about bare necessities. So, number one, Julio, let's begin.
Okay, look, I'm gonna go straight up, say it right away. I think the number one thing you need is data. And by that, I mean, I don't even mean LinkedIn Navigator. For me, that's baseline these days, like CRM and LinkedIn Navigator, like you can't even think about getting sales without them. But I think the number one thing that comes to my mind is good verified email addresses and mobile numbers. That would be the absolute baseline for the SDR work, I think.
Well, it's funny you should mention it. I did have several talks with some of the clients that I consult with, and surprise, they don't actually use a CRM.
Really? Like the Excel spreadsheet?
2023, man.
Wow.
All right. So,
I mean, look,
there are some. I mean, again, this is not their fault, right? So
they
are experts in something else. They are very good at some other things, right? And they just didn't consider sales, right? So most of the revenue comes from referrals.
Yeah, but that's still mental. Look, I'm sorry. These days, if you're a founder or a managing director, general manager, and you don't have a CRM, it's like, I don't know. It's like you're trying to walk the dog, right? And you're just carrying it like this, like instead of putting on the ground, like it just doesn't make any sense. Yeah, you get it outside, he'll do what he has to, but it's not going to be the best way to achieve.
I mean,
right?
I agree with you, and I understand them and where they are coming from. So glass half full,
you're very nice.
Glass half.
You're being too nice. Whenever I talk to a founder and they told me they don't have a CRM, I'll be like, first, this is what you're going to do. You're going to download this CRM. You're going to try it. Then after we talk, because for me, it's just a baseline to try and do your job properly, basically.
Yeah. No, I do have a lot more understanding than you. That's for sure. And for LinkedIn Sales Navigator, I would say yes to a degree. So what I mean by that is there are some industries where people are just not on LinkedIn.
True. Yeah.
So then why would you spend 100 euros?
True.
If because LinkedIn Sales Navigator is actually a really good tool for research.
Of course.
Not a lot of things you can do with it. except for go into super detailed research. Like you got to know how to use it. So, and so when I say you got to know how to use it, my first thing that comes to mind is the Boolean search, which not a lot of people know how to use, and we can address this in some other way.
Yeah, I mean, actually, what you raise a good point. I was talking to a client last week about getting to the healthcare market and social care homes in the UK. And obviously that's not going to get a lot of results on LinkedIn. Hospitality, similarly. So there are some industries that I would agree you don't need navigator for. And you can't say that you don't need every single SDR to have navigator either, right? If the lists are done well, if you got a good CRM, you don't need navigator for everybody, let's say.
Yeah. I would say that tracks. So let's talk data, right? I mean, when we say data, and obviously some companies are more advanced than some when it comes to the actual usage of it, right? But when we say data, let's just clarify a little bit, like, what do we mean when we say data, right? And then because there is vastness in data, right? Like you can get demographic data, which is usually what people are thinking of, but there is psychometric data and all of the other subcategories that we can actually dive into. Right?
True. I mean, look, I've seen a lot of cool tech that gives you like intent, for example, buyer intents, like, and the question is, first of all, how reliable it is, which again, it's not something I've done before. I rather do my own research than rely on what comes online. But when I talk about data, what I mean is the bread and butter. So I mean, the email addresses, they will not bounce, because then you very quickly destroy your domain reputation, and mobile numbers that will work. Because there's a lot of talk about, on LinkedIn, I follow a lot of sales trainers getting past the gatekeeper, right? The way I see it,
by the way, I hate that word.
Yeah, like it's like it just makes it sound like
they are evil in some way. No, like this is your ally, and you should be treating him or her like an ally. So
there's the two schools of thought, right? The people that see it as an ally, the people that see it as like, you need to get out of the way to get me to the decision maker. Again, but that's a discussion on their own, to be honest.
Yeah, agreed.
But I stand with you. I'll always be nice to people and always try and help them. And generally they'll behave well with you. But anyway, going back to the point, the gatekeeper is, I think any company above 200 employees, it's almost impossible to get passed through. Like, okay, you can try, but it's going to take you so many tries, it makes no sense.
Yeah.
So I think direct lines is the minimum, a mobile number is better for cold calling. Otherwise, if you go in SDRs, they need to go for receptionist a lot. They're going to lose their motivation really quickly. At least that's my personal opinion. It's not that expensive to get mobile numbers. Just get the mobile numbers.
No. And I always kind of talk about that there are like 3 tiers of and by the way, for everyone looking, no one is paying us to name names yet. But you kind of have 3 tiers, right? So you have the first tier, which is when you use data provider in conjunction with LinkedIn, right? So you find someone on LinkedIn, you click on the extension, and you did kind of get the data, right? So kind of no mass research, although some of these or most of these do have kind of mass searches,
of course, yeah.
Right. So that's your, I don't know, Lead IQ, Lucia, 411, Rocket Research, and stuff like that. Then you kind of have the second tier, which is Slintel, Cognizant, Seamless, right? Which is again a bit more expensive, but a lot like correct data, like more correct and more people in the database itself.
I think, look, I've researched this extensively. I think that the 3 main options for Europe, at least, number 1 in Anglo-Saxon, so UK market, Cognizant obviously is the best. There's no way.
Well, they are a UK company.
Yeah, they are a UK company, exactly.
Although they do have development in North Macedonia. So
Oh, really? Oh, I didn't know. That's interesting.
Ah,
Again, that's not surprising these days.
yeah.
But I would say then for continental Europe, I've heard really good things about EcoBot, which is
Mm.
similarly priced to Cognism.
Yeah,
Uh,
I know about Kuba.
yeah, it's again like
And
€1,000.
I've heard, I didn't test it, but I heard for Dach market
Yeah, but
that
they're
that is
German.
especially good.
They're German,
But
exactly.
they are German.
So that makes sense. And then, but I think for me, what I use, which I found is the Epimedium, is Lucia actually. They generally
It's
will
very
have,
easy.
yeah, like 15-20% of the mobile numbers, and then 75% of those will be correct. So you're looking at probably like 10% of the overall people on LinkedIn numbers, which is not huge, but it's
Yeah.
still better than just trying to ring reception or just relying on emails or LinkedIn, right?
Yeah. I always, so when we're talking about the data, right? And obviously Zoom info being kind of
Yeah, Zoom info is, but for the US, Zoom info is great. But
for the
again,
US, yeah, of course. Yeah. So when we talk about data, one of the things, so whenever I consult and with my guys currently, with Germans, with Centric, we use two data providers. And this is what I would kind of suggest, recommend everyone to, right? So use one that is kind of the main one. So let's say if you are targeting mainly UK, then use Cognizant or EchoBot for Germany and stuff like that. But then just buy another one, like buy Lucia, but like the lower echelon, just kind of just to enrich if you don't find a person that you are actually looking for, especially if you're doing ABS, account-based strategy, right? So either account-based marketing or account-based.
I think it makes perfect sense because you want to integrate what's missing from one to the other, because there are always going to be areas of overlapping or in areas that they actually don't collide. So it makes perfect sense. And then I would say for the emails, like what have you used in the past? What do you think is are the best ideas out there?
Well, when you say emails, what do you mean? You mean,
I mean, just simple personal email addresses, like of business email addresses of people.
Well, I really don't have a preference. My idea is, again, use two or three, and if one doesn't find, another one will. And you kind of complement that, right?
Yeah, but I mean, generally speaking, emails I think is a lot easier because a lot of emails can be predicted based on the company.
They can be predicted, yeah.
Exactly. So I think a lot of them are there. I personally, I've tried a few of them, and I think Apollo is very difficult to beat. They just seem to have the best data.
I didn't use it. I am not a huge fan of it.
You're not an Apollo fan? Ah, okay. I've always found very good results with that, basically.
Okay, all right. So what we've covered so far is research, which is LinkedIn Sales Navigator, and then some kind of a data provider, right? So you can actually use something, and then of course the CRM. So let's talk. Obviously, we mentioned intent data, but I tried it. I tried Zoom Infos. I tried Bombora.
You weren't too impressed.
I am not sold on it, to be perfectly honest.
I mean, look, I think intent data is very useful for big corporations because they have very different triggers based on when you're selling to enterprise. So, you know, it's, for example, one feature that everyone talks about is knowing when a person's left, right? Or when they started a new job. Yeah. So there's this general.
But you can track that in LinkedIn Sales.
Exactly. So LinkedIn already gives you that. So I think that there is some stuff that's getting out there that is that's interesting, but I don't think we're close to have like real deal breakers like we have in Cognism, for example.
Yeah. And I will now say something that is a bit, maybe a bit controversial, but CRM, maybe LinkedIn Sales Nav, and of course the data tool. And then you would just need a power dialer. And that's it.
I'll say no. I disagree. I disagree.
Especially when it comes to, let's say, sales engagement tools.
I think you're still missing one piece, which is the email marketing. So I would say to do like a general multi-channel sequence. I don't like to automate LinkedIn because I think that's too easy to catch, and also LinkedIn doesn't like it. But at least emails, I'm happy to have a sequence set up and built into my so at least the minimum level of email sequencing I like to have.
The older I get, the more I'm inclined, like, dude, just pick up the damn phone and call them constantly, and then use email and LinkedIn as support for the calls.
Well, exactly, but you still want them to have a support, right? And if you have to spend the time all the time writing a personalized email, I think my technique.
I would never write personalized emails.
Well, I think
we can talk about this.
We can talk about this separately, but anyway, I think built into the channel. Also, there's one major thing about emails is that it doesn't matter how good your data is, you will not get all the mobile numbers, right? And unless you got a group of callers that are really good at getting past reception and through to decision makers, and good luck, because that takes so much time, then the emails is the best way that you can also get numbers, because even if they reply, I'm not interested, usually there's a number that I can call. Right. So, and I have converted people like, I'm not interested. Then I called them up.
I did as well. I mean, that's kind of your basics. Someone replies, you call them up immediately and see what the hell is happening.
Exactly. And even if they say I'm not interested, I always say the person that doesn't know interest is better than the person that ignores you, right?
I have a little bit of issue with email, and I really don't know what to think. So let's say that you, and we are still at the top of the funnel, right? So let's say that you're using some kind of sales engagement tool, right? So you can program the sequences, you can put in your calls, you have whatever dialer you're using, it really doesn't matter. Like of course, obviously you gotta have a dialer. If you have a power dialer, that's better. And if your total addressable market is really big, then you use Connect and Sell. Shout out to guys from Connect and Sell, especially to my good friend Alex. And what happens when, and we are seeing this, especially with ChatGPT 4, that is really capable of writing decent prospecting emails. So what's stopping a company piggybacking on ChatGPT and then creating a fully automated email send sequences that the only thing that you need is data? So basically what you do
there's nothing
is
stopping them.
Bam, 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 and then send 200, 300, 400 emails a day that are fairly okay. Maybe not the best, but fairly okay. What then? What happens then? So then instead of 100 emails per day that executives get, they will get 1,000?
Potentially. But we'll need to get there first anyway. I don't think we're quite there yet.
You don't think? Oh, I think we're super close to that.
Look, I've seen services that provide personalized emails, because keep in mind that if you just do email blasting, people can tell, yeah? If the email is not personalized, people can realize. So again, if it's relevant, it's done well. I've seen an email received recently that was entirely automated, done very well with ChatGPT, and they were asking for $2,000 a month to use their product, which is pretty high, right?
Bonkers.
Yeah, but at the same time, look, they were guaranteeing 15 meetings a month. So obviously in a situation like that, and you know, the funny thing is their email was going to spam. And I was like,
that's another thing, man. That's email deliverability that people are kind of lacking. One of the people I do follow is Marky Mark. You can catch him on LinkedIn. He's actually very good at explaining. Jesse Olette. Jesse Olette, who is ex. So if you guys are sticking around so far, We are talking about sales tech and kind of bare necessities, and we are now at email deliverability. So get a hold of Jesse Ouellette.
I'm going to follow him as well.
He's excellent at this specific topic.
Interesting. Well, I think deliverability is a big, and also it's become even more important because Google has been cracking down on domain warmers, right? So now,
for sure,
IP warmers are not legal anymore for Google, which means that all these companies that were relying on getting a domain, warming it up artificially, and then email blasting now have issues. So I do think that the phone is going to come back into. I mean, I don't think it's ever left, but I think it's becoming more popular again.
No. I think people who rely on calling will forever call. Me being one of them, and you being second. That's for sure. But my issue with all of this is we have a myriad of new sellers, like younglings. I call them younglings, like in Star Wars. Young Padawans.
Other ones.
Yeah, well, they are. They are. And welcome to the sales club, younglings. But this is something that is called silent sales, right? When you're trying to get a meeting or trying to do discovery without talking to anyone, which is completely ridiculous. At least.
Well, look, one thing that's that made me think about this, and when I came from recruitment to SaaS, we only called. We didn't have we literally didn't send emails like ever. So it was just pure cold calling, right? And then I came into SaaS, and there's a lot more different nuances, etc. One thing though that made me think is door-to-door sales almost died. Right? Would you say it went from probably reduced by 90% over the last 2 decades, I would say. And so like, there's a part of me that thinks is sales going to evolve away from the phone. I don't think so, to be honest. But I think we should discuss this in another podcast. But like a full-on.
Let's get back to we tend to sidetrack.
Yeah, as usual. We get excited and let's talk about.
Let's do cold calling right now. Sorry. Just knock off my camera. Yeah. Okay. So you gotta have a dialer, right? If you're gonna do the cold calling.
If you got the calling.
Yep. If you're limited in budget, I would suggest get a power dialer. But basically, you load up your list and it calls number one by one. Or if you have a very good budget, but also your TAM is fairly big, then just use a power assisted dialer or PAD. My recommendation is Connect and Sell. Again, no one is paying us to say that. I just have very good friends working there. So
I think the issue that you need a big team for these predicted dialer or the PADs. You need a bigger sales team. Otherwise, I don't think
you need the market. You don't need a big team. You just need a big
I think, for example, some of them will not implement unless you have at least 10 salespeople, usually, because it's not worth it.
That makes sense.
So it kind of makes sense. I would say power dialer is the minimum. Another thing that I think in Europe is crucial is you need to call from mobile numbers.
Yeah.
I think if you call from a landline, you instantly people know that you're a sales call. So I think that will already reduce by probably 50% the pickup.
Just a note, I don't know what is the situation in Europe/US, but here in Serbia, there was a new law where companies need to register their phone numbers with every telecom. So if someone is calling you on your mobile, it will immediately show up the name of the company that's calling.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Oh, yeah. Super useful. And
that's gonna make it even harder. It's gonna goodbye.
Make it even fucking harder. But just using my personal mobile phone to call people.
Can we just sidetrack for 1 second? Did you notice the LinkedIn changed the inbox?
No.
So I don't know if it was just a test, but I opened. Yes, if you look at the LinkedIn, I have the focus.
Right, let's look at it.
I have the focus inbox and the other inbox, right?
Oh, I have that as well. Yes.
So it's like for Gmail, right? And all I was thinking about, all these guys selling this hey, LinkedIn sales courses, get your meetings through LinkedIn. Now they're all going to end up into the other inbox. And that's really going to make things difficult.
Difficult, I know.
Yeah,
Well,
it's going to
look,
filter it away.
and we can talk about this, right? Probably some other time, but I do want to get to a little bit of tech stack when it comes to account executives. But reachability by phone, so connection rates, email deliverability, and then couple that with open rates, reply rates, and stuff like that. And then LinkedIn that hates automation, it hates everything that messes up with its own ecosystem. So the top of the funnel is really, really difficult to crack unless you are relying on tech. I mean, that's kind of a I would say given. So for AIs, if we move it along a little bit, well, first of all, you need, I would say, well, again, depending on what you do, basically, but tools like DocuSign or Proposify or something like that, like for the just general document management, I think that's a must.
Yeah, I mean, that's like so level 0. I wouldn't even think about.
You would call this level 0? I know companies that just send it in Word document.
I mean, honestly, these days, I think a client actually asked me, "Can you scan this?" And I was like,
"Can you scan it?"
I've not had the scanner for 10 years.
Just
fuck. I mean, it was like, actually, I got DocuSign. I was like, thank God. Like, but yeah, I generally didn't even think about it, you know. But I would say, like, to get a little bit more kinky, allow me to term, with the account executive word, one piece of tech that I've been liking, I don't know if you've been seeing this, is these basically recorders that actually give you like read the emotions of the seller. Or
like Gong?
Well, I mean, Gong is the most advanced, but like there's like lower, like Gong, I would say, is the mothership, I would say.
All right.
But then there's a lot of them that like just tell you like you've been talking too much, or there's another one that tells you like, oh, this person mentioned this objection, you can try with this. You know, I think there's quite a lot of stuff in there that can help at least a little bit, basically.
All right. Well, that's, yeah, I like what they're doing at Gong. I mean, that's I would say very, very useful, because again, as we mentioned in the first part of this podcast, it is getting so much more difficult to get a discovery call or a meeting or to generate an SQL, right? It's like super, super difficult. And then once you do, maybe try not to screw it up.
I think we should do a session about how you run a proper demo, you know, because
for sure. Demo discover this. I'm actually we're finishing up a book on the discovery call.
Nice.
And hopefully I would say 2 weeks, it's going to be done. And then it goes to the editor for the second time, and goes to the designer, and it's ready, up and running.
I mean, look, because you mentioned Discover, right? And we mentioned DocuSign.
Yeah.
At this point, I'm going to come out and say something that's not a tech, it's free, but I still think people should keep in mind, especially AEs, because I hear a lot of bitching about, oh, you know, you need to send so many proposals, etc. And so many times, just the prospect just needs to be disqualified. Instead of doing all this extra work, the person just isn't, it's like the famous quote from movies, is not that into you, you know? That's simple as that. Just let it go. Just go talk to someone else, lady.
Yeah.
Like, it's not working.
I know. I do that. So with Centric, with the German startup that I'm working with, I do that. I disqualify, but in a different way, right? So I'm trying to find out the reasons why they wouldn't fight against fakes and counterfeits. For my consulting, what I do is I send prices immediately. Like, hey, because usually people contact me most of the time. And then I say, okay, well, before we begin, this is what I do, and these are my prices. If this still makes sense for you, let's talk. If it's too much, or that's fine again, but let's just not waste time.
I've actually
I try to push people away and to disqualify them to save everyone's time.
look. I think that's something I've realized recently. I put prices on my website as well. Just to set a baseline. And at the end of the day, because I end up doing sometimes doing some calls, and then people are trying to get advice for free, right? And that's fair enough. It's, playing the game, but at the same time, like going back to the account executive, sometimes they're so desperate to try and close the deal that they're not, there's a big waving red flag, and they're just not addressing it,
Yeah, of course. I mean, so you AIs in my both experience, in my opinion, AI need to master two things. Number one, they need to know how to qualify people. No, they need to know how to qualify opportunities.
Or disqualify opportunities.
And then level two is they need to learn how to disqualify. Disqualifying is fairly easy, right? You ask a whole bunch of questions regarding their business initiative and problems they have, and then you dig deeper, and then you do Sandler. Oh, this is a surface problem, business problem, personal problem, and then you kind of dig deeper, and every single account executive is trained to do that.
Agreed.
But they're not trained in disqualifying.
Well, but that's actually why tools like that will basically remind you, like they'll have like literally a simple structure of the call that you got to follow. Because this is one of the things that these tools really help with, is they help you build a routine for how you go about doing sales. You don't need an account executive with 10 years experience to actually go through the structure, because they know it by heart, right? But like for ramping up the junior people or ensuring that these percentage points are kept, that's when the tools come into play, I would say.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, we are still at that point where humans sell to humans. So meaning you and I still have jobs.
Thank God.
And while this is the case, I think our reliance on tools, I think it will just increase. Right? And I don't see this as do you see it as a bad thing? Like relying on so many tools?
I mean, look, what I see as a bad thing is that I even saw a comment on LinkedIn of someone says, but what if the tools are the reason the salespeople are good? And that I see as a problem, right? So the way I see it is
this mindset.
Yeah, I mean, look, the logic I would see is that you should start with as little tools as possible and learning how you actually go about selling, how you do a value proposition, how you ask questions, etc. And then the more experience you get, the more tools you unlock. Because it's like giving a bazooka to a cadet. They don't know how to use a bloody Glock, and you give them a bazooka. Say, don't worry, just aim. Yeah, okay, they'll cause a lot more damage, but they also cause a lot of friendly fire.
Just aim.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why, look, Sales Loft, amazing, right?
Yeah.
Like top-notch sales engagement tool. But to give it to an SDR, there's zero experience in sales, and they don't know to do a phone call. You can have the best sequence in the world, but it's still going to be a problem.
It is going to be a problem. Yeah, I fallen into that trap 5-6 years ago, or maybe 3 or 4 years. The pandemic has completely wrecked. What year is this?
2023.
2020. All right. So 4 or 5 years ago, I began a sales outsourcing company.
Oh,
basically focusing on top of the phone.
Yeah, an SDR outsourcing. Yeah.
SDR for hire, and I grossly underestimated the cost of sales tools. That was number one. And number two, exactly what you said. I bought Sales Loft for my team, but they were super junior that didn't even know how to do call calls. And that was kind of fucked up.
Of course. Yeah.
But I failed miserably.
Look, I was about to do the same thing. I was going down the SDR outsourcing.
Yeah.
And then I just remembered that I actually like doing sales more than I like managing salespeople. And then I quickly pulled back and I was like, you know what? I'm going to stick to training and mentoring. That's way better for me.
That's way better. Yeah. All right. Anything else maybe we can add when it comes to, let's say, account executives?
I've got a couple of things that I think are still relevant, which would be actual writing. So I would say Grammarly, absolutely.
Oh, yeah. For sure.
I mean, look, maybe ChatGPT 4 even better these days, but Grammarly, 100%, like best money I've ever spent. And
you pay for premium?
I go premium, man, and it's look, I usually am a verbose Italian chatting a lot of shit when I type, and then with Grammarly I sound like an English lord. It's great. It's amazing. Just cuts away all the crap. But even better for email writing, you probably heard about them, is Lavender.
Oh, I know Lavender. I haven't been able to test it. Right.
Lavender is like, look, Grammarly is the good old Glock. It will shoot and kill, do everything for you. Lavender is like a precision, a combination between a sniper and a bazooka. It's amazing. So yeah, that's the true power of AI. I mean, it's even better than ChatGPT basically, because it's precisely done for email writing and conversion.
All right. Maybe I could give it a go. Test it out a little bit. Yeah. All right.
Yeah, I think, look, doesn't come across any name, but I've also seen a lot of ed tech around how to ramp up faster. So there's a lot of
I think that kind of goes into the sales enablement, and I think
maybe
we could tackle that at one point.
I mean, that's kind of what we do as well, so it would be relevant for sure.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, especially when we train younglings.
Exactly.
All right, my man. Cool talk. I mean, this is a very important topic, especially if you're maybe a first-time founder or just someone getting into sales. What do you think we close it up? You give a little bit of recap of what are the tools or the type of tools that we did, and then maybe I'll close it up with just a bit of advice. And then sure. We will end it.
For sure. So look, just to recap in terms of data finding tools, that's where we would start. Obviously, look, CRM baseline, LinkedIn Navigator baseline, then data finding tools for something for validated emails. I use Apollo, is a good idea. Generally for mobile numbers, UK Cognism, EchoBot for DACH region, Lucia can kind of work all across Europe, and obviously ZoomInfo for the US. Then we go into a power dialer. That's the basics, like something that will allow you to call from A to Z. I also recommend an email marketing tool to automate some of the follow-up emails. Good examples are Lemlist, for example, is a pretty good tool that you can use. Reply is also quite nice. Then we go into looking at the analysis of the actual video calls. So you got things like Gong, you can use Balto. It's another good example. And then you can kind of fan out from there and look at all the different possibilities. I would say.
Oh yeah. So what I would finish this is one of the things that I kind of teach salespeople that want to switch jobs, and let's maybe finish that. So one of the things that I would encourage them always to ask the prospective employer, and when I do interviews, I present this, right? So I'm proactive when it comes to this. I always teach them, ask about the sales tech stack. So ask about the CRM, the data, the dialer, the if they're using intent. So to ask about all of the sales technology that we'll be using, because sometimes, especially if you're heading into post-Series A startup, that will be the difference between you being successful and not being successful.
Also shows that you kind of know what you're talking about. If you don't even ask what the tech is, like I remember, like sometimes when I'm a mentor in a startup, I'll be like, that's one of the first questions. And if they really got no idea, I'll be like, look, guys, we need to do a lot more work if you got no idea what tech you should be using as well.
Cool. Excellent episode, my friends. We are back, obviously, next week with a new topic. Until that time, please hit like if you're watching on YouTube. Subscribe either to Spotify or our YouTube channel. Every week, new episode, completely raw, completely uncut. Now go and sell something.
Ciao, guys. Enjoy.
Ciao.